The wind carried dust across the yard when Elias Crowe first saw the two small shapes in the doorway of his stable. He had come out before dawn to check the mare that had thrown a shoe, the day before his lantern cutting pale light through the dark. The girls stood pressed against the wallboards, one clutching the other's hand so tight their knuckles showed white. The older could not have been more than 10, the younger perhaps 6. Their dresses were thin cotton, patched and faded too light for the October chill that settled in the bones before sunrise. Elias stopped. He set the lantern on an overturned bucket. Neither girl moved. Their eyes followed him the way wild things watch, a hunter wary and still. He saw the fear in them plain, but also something else, exhaustion so deep it had carved hollows under their eyes. He did not speak at first. Words came hard to him after years alone. Instead, he walked past them slow, giving wide space, and lifted the mare's hoof to inspect the split shoe. The horse shifted, nickering low. One of the girls flinched at the sound. When he finished, he straightened and looked at them again. "You hungry?" The older girl nodded once, small and quick. The younger hid her face against her sister's shoulder. Elias went into the house without another word. He built up the fire in the cook stove, set water to boil sliced thick pieces of yesterday's bread and fried salt pork in the skillet until the fat ran clear. He cracked 4 eggs into the pan, the yolks breaking bright against the iron. When the food was ready, he carried 2 tin plates out to the stable, along with a jug of milk he kept cool in the spring house. They ate where they stood, backs to the wall, too hungry to sit. Elias watched from the doorway. He saw how the younger girl's hands shook, holding the bread, how she chewed slowly as if afraid the food might disappear. The older one ate faster but kept glancing at her sister, making sure she swallowed. When the plates were clean, Elias took them back. He returned with blankets from his own bed, wool heavy-smelling faintly of lanolin and wood smoke. He draped one over each girl's shoulders without touching them. Then he went to the tack room, pulled down 2 horse blankets and spread them on the cleanest straw in an empty stall. He lit a second lantern and hung it high, so the light would not frighten the stock. "You can stay here tonight," he said. His voice sounded rough even to himself. "Dr. Locke's from inside." The older girl looked up at him, then really looked. "We won't steal nothing." "I know." She swallowed. "Our ma's gone." Elias felt something turn in his chest, sharp and familiar. He nodded once. "Get some rest." He left them there and walked back to the house through the dark. Inside, he sat at the table with his coffee gone cold and stared at the wall. Memories came unbidden, his own sister, small and feverish, the way her hand had slipped from his when the pneumonia took her 20 years before. He had been 14 then, too young to save her, old enough to carry the weight forever. Outside, the wind rose, rattling the shutters. Elias listened for sounds from the stable, crying movement, anything, but heard only the horses shifting in their stalls. He rose, banked the fire, and lay on his cot without undressing. Sleep did not come easy. Morning brought frost on the grass and a sky the color of new tin. Elias found the girls already awake, folding the blankets with careful hands. The older one, Clara, she told him when he asked, said they had walked most of the night from the rail siding 8 miles east. Their mother had died in Denver 3 weeks before consumption, the doctor said. She had made them promise to find their uncle in Cheyenne, but the letter they carried had come back unclaimed. The last money bought train tickets as far as the siding. After that, they walked. Elias listened without interrupting. When Clara finished, he asked only one question. "You got kin anywhere else?" She shook her head. He looked at the younger girl, Lily, who had not spoken since the night before. She held a small cloth doll, its face worn smooth from years of thumbs brushing the cheek. Elias felt the old ache again, deeper this time. "Help me with the horses," he said. They followed him out. He showed them how to measure oats, how to fork hay without wasting it, how to brush a horse without startling it. Their hands were small but willing. When Lily dropped the curry comb, he picked it up and placed it back in her palm without comment. By noon, the girls had color in their cheeks. Elias made bean soup with ham hock and cornbread. They ate at the table, this time silent, except for the scrape of spoons. Afterward, Clara helped wash the dishes while Lily sat on the floor near the stove watching the flames. That evening, Elias rode out to check the north fence line. When he returned, the girls had swept the porch and stacked firewood by the door. He did not thank them aloud. Instead, he brought in an extra chair from the shed and set it at the table. Days passed in quiet rhythm. The girls learned the chores. Elias taught them without hurry. He spoke more to the animals than to them, but they listened when he did speak. Clara asked questions about the land, the creeks, the stars. Lily began to smile small and fleeting. One night after supper, Clara told him about their mother, how she sang hymns while she worked, how she smelled of lavender soap even when the sickness came. Elias listened, staring into his coffee. When she finished, he said, "My ma sang too. Old songs from Tennessee." It was the first thing he had offered of himself. Winter drew closer. The days shortened. Elias knew they could not stay in the stable forever. The house had room, but opening the door meant something he was not sure he could bear. Still, when the first hard frost came and the wind cut through the cracks, he carried their blankets inside and made pallets by the stove. Clara looked at him with wide eyes. Lily clutched her doll. "You'll catch your death out there," he said simply. They moved in that night. Elias did not sleep much. He lay listening to their breathing small and even, and felt the house change around him. It was no longer empty. The first snow came in late November, soft and silent, covering the corrals in a thin white skin by morning. Elias woke to find Clara already at the stove feeding small splits of pine into the fire. She had learned the trick of it, how to lay the kindling, so the draft pulled clean without smoking the room. Lily sat cross-legged on the rug, brushing the doll's matted yarn hair with slow, careful strokes. Elias pulled on his coat and stepped outside. The cold bit his face. He broke ice on the stock tank with an axe, the sound sharp against the stillness, then forked hay to the horses. When he returned, steam rose from the oatmeal Clara had set to simmer. She had added a spoonful of molasses from the jar he kept on the high shelf. The sweetness filled the kitchen like a memory. They ate together now without hesitation. Lily still spoke little, but she no longer hid her face when Elias looked her way. Sometimes she pushed her bowl toward him when she finished offering the last bites the way a child might share a prize. He always took them, though his stomach had room for more. Afternoons, Elias rode the boundaries. The girls stayed close to the house, gathering kindling, feeding the chickens, sweeping snow from the porch steps. Clara kept a sharp eye on Lily, calling her back when she wandered too far toward the creek. Once Elias returned to find them both, kneeling in the lean to scraping mud from boots with a broken kitchen knife. Their hands were red from the cold. He said nothing, only fetched the tin of saddle grease and showed them how to rub it into the leather to keep it soft. Trust grew in small measures. Claire began to ask about the land, how deep the well ran, why the cottonwoods along the creek turned gold before the aspens, whether the mountains to the west ever lost their snow. Elias answered in short sentences, surprised each time by how easily the words came. One evening after supper, he pulled the old family Bible from the shelf above the mantel. The leather had cracked along the spine. He opened it to the flyleaf where his mother had written the names in careful copperplate: Elias James Crowe, born 1861, Sarah Elizabeth Crowe, born 1864. Beneath Sarah's name, someone his father most likely had drawn a thin line through the date of death. Clara traced the ink with her finger. She was only 15. Pneumonia, Elias said. Took her quick. Lily looked up from her doll. Her voice came small and clear. Ma said the good ones go first, so the rest of us learn how to stay. Elias felt the words settle somewhere behind his ribs. He closed the book without speaking and returned it to the shelf. Winter deepened. Blizzards rolled in from the north one after another, sealing the valley in white. Elias taught the girls to read trail sign in the snow deer tracks, coyote the wide drag of an elk's belly when it crossed deep drifts. They learned to bank the fire at night so the coals would still be alive come morning. They learned the sound of a horse in distress, the difference between a cough from dust and one from sickness. One night the wind howled so hard the house timbers groaned. Elias woke to Clara standing beside his cot holding a lantern. Lily was feverish, shivering under every blanket they owned. Her skin burned to the touch. Elias carried her to the kitchen table, laid her on his own quilt, and built the fire high. He boiled water-steeped willow bark the way his mother once had, and spooned the bitter tea past Lily's cracked lips. Clara sat beside her sister, holding her hand, whispering the hymns their mother used to sing. Elias stayed up through the night, feeding the stove, changing the cool cloths on Lily's forehead. Toward dawn, the fever broke. Lily opened her eyes, saw him sitting there with elbows on his knees, and reached out one small hand. He took it. Her fingers curled around his thumb. After that, something shifted. Not all at once, but steady, like ice, going out on a river in spring. By January, the snow lay chest-deep in places. Elias had to shovel paths to the barn, to the woodpile, to the outhouse. The girls helped, small shovels scraping beside his larger one. Their breath hung in white clouds. Sometimes Lily laughed, a sound so sudden and bright it startled the horses. Then word came. A rider appeared, one brittle afternoon coat, frosted horse steaming. He carried a letter from the county seat. Elias read it, standing in the doorway while the man waited. The banker in town, Hiram Tate, had called in the note. Elias's father had signed 20 years before. Interest had compounded while Elias was away fighting in the war and then grieving after. The amount stood at $472.18, payable by March 1st, or the land would be sold at auction. Elias folded the paper once, twice, and slipped it into his shirt pocket. The rider tipped his hat and rode off. Inside, Clara watched him from the table where she was mending a torn sleeve. Trouble, he looked at her a long moment. Old trouble, he said. Nothing new, but it was new to her, and to Lily, who had begun to call the house home. That night, Elias sat alone at the table after the girls slept. He opened the ledger he kept in the bottom drawer. The figures stared back at him. Calves sold hay, put up a few head of cattle still on grass lease. Not enough. Not near enough. He closed the book and stared into the dark beyond the window. The land had been his father's, his grandfather's before that. It had never been rich, but it had been theirs. Now it hung by a thread, and two children who had nowhere else to go hung with it. He did not sleep. The days after the letter arrived turned brittle and quiet. Elias rose earlier, worked later. He rode out each morning to count the cattle still wintering on the leased pasture, tallying in his head what they might bring at market come spring. The figure never reached $472. He mended harness by lantern light, after supper patched the barn roof where snow had leaked through anything to keep his hands busy and his mind from circling the same dark track. Clara noticed first. She asked no questions, but she began to do more without being told, scrubbing the milk pails until they shone, sweeping the floors twice a day, folding his shirts with creases sharp as knife edges. Lily followed her lead, trailing behind with a rag or a broom too big for her hands. They moved through the house like small shadows, trying to make themselves useful. One afternoon, Elias found Clara standing at the kitchen window, staring toward the road that led to town. Snow had drifted against the fence posts, white as bone. She turned when he stomped his boots on the threshold. "You gonna lose it?" she asked. No preamble. Just the question plain. He set the milk bucket on the table. "Maybe." She nodded once, as if she had expected the answer. "We can leave. If it helps." Elias felt the words land like a stone in still water. He looked at her thin shoulders, squared chin, lifted just enough to show she meant it. Behind her, Lily sat on the floor, sorting dried beans into piles by color, humming a tune he did not recognize. No, he said. You're not going anywhere. Clara's eyes searched his face. We brought this trouble. You brought nothing but yourselves. Trouble was already here. He walked past her to the stove and poured coffee he did not want. His hand shook once, just enough to slosh a drop over the rim. He wiped it up with his thumb. That night the wind died, and the stars came out cold and close. Elias stepped onto the porch after the girls slept. He leaned against a post and smoked the last of his tobacco, watching his breath curl white in the moonlight. The land lay still under its blanket of snow, the creek frozen silent, the mountains black against the sky. He had spent most of his life on this ground. It had never felt like a possession until now, when someone else wanted to take it. The next morning, Hiram Tate himself rode up the lane. He came alone, dressed in a black wool coat and a bowler hat that looked out of place against the white horizon. His horse was a sleek bay gelding, too fine for ranch work. Elias met him in the yard before he could dismount. Tate tipped the hat. Morning, Elias. Cold one. Elias did not answer. Tate glanced at the house. Heard you got company. Family, Elias said. A small lie, but it felt true when he said it. Tate smiled without warmth. Family's a fine thing. Makes a man think twice about obligations. That note's due in 6 weeks. Interest keeps running. I know the terms. Good. Then you know what happens if it ain't paid. Tate's eyes moved over the outbuildings, the corrals, the small kitchen garden staked under snow. Place could use some improvements. I've got men who could manage it better. More profit for everyone. Elias felt heat rise under his collar. It's managed fine. Tate shrugged. We'll see come March. He reined the gelding around. Don't wait too long to decide, Elias. Pride don't pay taxes. He rode off at an easy trot, leaving hoofprints dark against the snow. Inside, Clara had watched from the window. When Elias came in, she said nothing at first. She poured him coffee, set the cup in front of him, then sat across the table. He wants the land, she said. He wants everything he can take. Clara looked down at her hands. Ma used to say some men collect things the way others collect debts. They don't stop till they've got it all. Elias drank the coffee. It tasted bitter. Your ma was right. That evening he opened the strongbox under his cot. Inside lay his mother's wedding ring, plain gold worn thin, and the deed to the ranch folded small. He stared at them a long time, then closed the lid. The following week, a neighbor, old man Whitaker from the next valley, stopped by with a sack of potatoes and a side of bacon. He had heard about the note. Word traveled fast in winter. Folks are talking, Whitaker said, voice low. Tate's been buying up paper all over the county. Some say he's got the judge in his pocket. Elias nodded. He might. Whitaker studied him. You aim to fight it? Elias looked toward the house where Clara was teaching Lily to knit with scraps of yarn. I aim to keep what's mine. Whitaker clapped him on the shoulder. Then you got friends when the time comes. He left without asking for payment. Elias carried the food inside. Clara took the sack without a word and began sorting the potatoes for the root cellar. Days passed. Snow melted in patches, then froze again at night. Elias worked the cattle, culled the weakest kept records in the ledger with a stub of pencil. Clara helped him tally. Her numbers were neat, careful. She asked about the prices in town, about the train that would carry the beef to market. She listened like someone memorizing a map she might have to follow alone. One night after supper, Lily climbed into Elias's lap without asking. She rested her head against his chest and fell asleep, holding her doll. Clara watched from the doorway, arms folded. She trusts you, she said quietly. Elias looked down at the sleeping child. Her hair smelled of wood smoke and soap. She's easy to trust. Clara came closer, and he met her eyes. You're harder. But you're getting there. She smiled, then small and real, the first he had seen without shadow behind it. Outside, the wind picked up again, carrying the promise of another storm. The storm struck without warning 2 nights later. The sky had been clear at dusk, stars sharp as cut glass. Then the wind rose sudden and hard from the northwest. Elias heard it first, a low moan that built to a roar. He stepped outside in his shirt sleeves to check the barn doors. Snow came horizontal, stinging his face like sand. Within minutes, the world narrowed to white. Inside, he found Clara already at the stove boiling water for tea. Lily huddled under a quilt on the rug doll, pressed to her chest. The lamp flickered as drafts found every crack. "Help me shutter the windows," Elias said. They worked fast. Clara hammered nails into the wooden panels he kept stacked in the shed. Lily carried them one by one, small arms straining. When the last board was up, the house felt smaller, safer. Elias banked the fire high and dragged the mattress from his cot into the main room. They made a nest of blankets and quilts around the stove. The wind screamed against the walls. The timbers creaked like a ship in heavy sea. Lily began to cry, soft at first, then louder. Clara pulled her close, rocking her. Elias sat beside them, back against the wall, knees drawn up. He reached out and laid a hand on Lily's foot, where it stuck out from the quilt. She stilled at the touch. "Tell us something," Clara said over the howl. "About when you were little." Elias hesitated. The past lived in him like an old wound he had learned not to touch. But the storm pressed in, and the girls needed something steady. "My pa used to say the land don't belong to us," he began. "It just lets us borrow it for a spell. He'd take me up to the ridge above the creek when I was about your age, Lily. We'd sit there till the sun dropped and the coyotes started calling. He never said much, just pointed out the shapes in the rocks, the way the light changed on the grass. Once he gave me a piece of flint he found, said it was older than both of us put together. I kept it in my pocket till the edges were smooth." He paused. The fire snapped. Outside, something, a branch maybe, cracked and fell. "I lost it the day he died," Elias said. "Fell out somewhere between the house and the barn. Never found it again." Claire looked at him across the quilt. "You miss him every day." Lily lifted her head. "Do you think Ma's watching Elias?" Met her eyes in the firelight. "I think she's close. Closer than we know." The girl nodded once, small and certain, then curled tighter against her sister. The storm lasted through the night and into the next day. When it finally eased, the world lay buried. Elias dug out the door at first light shovel, biting frozen snow. Clara and Lily followed, wrapped in every layer they owned. They cleared paths to the barn, to the chickens, to the woodpile. The horses nickered when Elias opened the doors. Their breath steamed in clouds. He forked hay while the girls scattered grain for the hens. By afternoon, the sun broke through, weak but real. The snow glittered like broken glass. Elias stood in the yard and looked at the house shutters still up, smoke rising straight now from the chimney. Clara came out carrying a bucket of ashes to spread on the path. She stopped beside him. "It held," she said. "It did." She looked up at the sky, then at him. "We held too." Elias felt something loosen in his chest. He reached out and rested a hand on her shoulder, brief light. She did not pull away. That evening, neighbors began to appear. Whitaker first, then the McAllisters from down the valley, then old Mrs. Grayson with her son. They came on snowshoes and horseback, bringing food, tools, news. Word of Tate's note had spread. They did not ask Elias what he planned. They simply worked, shoveling drifts from the corrals, checking fences, hauling water from the spring where the ice had cracked. The women carried in jars of preserves, loaves of bread still warm. The men spoke low about the banker, about the judge who owed him favors, about the auction date set for the 1st of March. Whitaker stayed till last. He stood with Elias on the porch as the others rode off into the dusk. Folks'll stand with you, he said. Not for charity. Because it's right. Elias nodded. Appreciate it. Whitaker glanced toward the house where Clara was lighting lamps. Them girls belong here now. Anyone can see it. When he had gone, Elias stepped inside. Lily slept on the rug, cheeks flushed from the cold. Clara sat at the table mending a torn coat sleeve, his coat. She looked up when he entered. They came for us, she said quietly. For all of us, Elias answered. He sat across from her. The lamp threw soft shadows on the walls. For the first time in years, the house felt full, not crowded, but lived in warm in a way that went beyond the fire. Clara set the needle down. What happens in March, we fight it, he said. With whatever we've got. She reached across the table and laid her hand over his. Her fingers were small, callous now from work. Then we fight. Elias turned his palm up and closed it around hers. He did not speak. He did not need to. Outside, the snow settled under a clearing sky. The stars came out again one by one. The weeks before March came in fits of thaw and freeze. Mud sucked at boots. The creek rose brown and fast, carrying last autumn's leaves downstream. Elias spent mornings in the barn, sorting calves for sale, checking teeth and hooves, marking the strongest with a dab of red paint on the rump. Each one he let go felt like a piece of the place torn away, but he kept count in the ledger with steady hand. Clara helped him drive them to the holding pen near the road. She learned to whistle low, to turn a straying steer, to swing a rope without tangling her feet. Lily rode double behind her sister on the old mare, small hands gripping Clara's coat. They spoke little of the auction. The date hung over them like smoke from a distant fire. Elias rode into town once a week for supplies, flour, salt, nails, and each time he passed the courthouse square where the notice was posted on the board, Elias Crowe property, 160 acres, more or less, to be sold, public auction March 1st at 10 in the forenoon. He read it every time as if the words might change. Neighbors kept coming. Not in crowds, but steady. McAllister brought a team of mules and helped Elias mend the east fence where the snow had weighted the wire till it snapped. Mrs. Grayson dropped off 2 jars of pickled beets and stayed long enough to show Clara how to knead bread so the crust stayed crisp. Whitaker appeared one afternoon with a bottle of good whiskey wrapped in burlap. He set it on the table without ceremony. For after he said, Elias looked at the bottle. You think we'll need it. I think you'll earn it. When the old man left, Elias poured 3 fingers into a tin cup and sat on the porch steps. Clara came out and sat beside him. The sun lay low, painting the snowfields gold. She took the cup when he offered it, sipped once, coughed, then handed it back. Tastes like fire, she said. Mostly it is. They sat in silence while the light faded. Lily played inside, singing softly to her doll. The sound drifted through the open door like something fragile and brave. The night before the auction, Elias could not sleep. He rose at 3, built the fire, set coffee to boil. Clara found him at the table when she came down before dawn, the lamp low, his hands wrapped around a mug gone cold. You're going, she said. Not a question. Have to. She pulled a chair close. We're coming with you. Elias looked at her. Her face was pale in the lamplight, but steady. It's no place for children. We're not children anymore, she said. Not after this winter. He did not argue. When Lily woke, they dressed in their best, Clara in her mother's old wool dress, let out at the hem, Lily in a clean pinafore. Elias shaved with cold water, put on the black coat he had worn to his father's funeral. They rode into town together, the 3 of them on the mare, and the work gelding blankets tied behind the saddles. The courthouse square was already full when they arrived. Wagons lined the street, men stood in small groups, breath steaming. Hiram Tate waited on the steps in his black coat, talking low to the county clerk. When he saw Elias, he smiled thin and raised a gloved hand in greeting. Elias did not return it. The auctioneer, a thin man with a voice like a saw, climbed the platform at 10 sharp. He read the terms in a rapid drone. Elias stood at the back with Clara on one side, Lily on the other. Her small hand found his. He closed his fingers around it. Bidding started low. Tate opened at $200. A rancher from the South Valley raised it to $225. Tate countered without hesitation. The numbers climbed slow, then faster. Elias felt the ground tilt under him with each call. At 400, the other bidder dropped out. Tate looked toward Elias' smile widening. 410, Tate said. The auctioneer scanned the crowd. Do I hear 420 silence? 410 going once. Elias stepped forward. His voice carried clear across the square. $472.18. A murmur ran through the men. Tate's smile froze. The auctioneer blinked. That's the exact amount of the note. It is, Elias said. He reached into his coat and pulled out the strongbox key on a leather thong. Clara stepped up beside him and placed the small cloth sack in his hand. The money from every calf sold, every odd job he had taken in town, every coin Whitaker and the others had quietly pressed into his palm over the weeks. He counted it out onto the clerk's table, coin by coin, note by note. The square went still, except for the clink of silver. When the last dollar lay there, Elias looked at Tate. Paid in full. The banker's face darkened. He opened his mouth, closed it. The clerk counted twice, then nodded to the auctioneer. Debt satisfied, the man called. Property remains with Elias Crowe. A low cheer rose from the crowd, quiet but real. Men clapped Elias on the back as he passed. Whitaker was there, grinning wide. McAllister shook his hand hard enough to hurt. Tate turned and walked away without another word. They rode home slow. The sun stood high now, melting snow from the eaves. Lily rode in front of Elias' head, resting against his chest. Clara rode beside them, reins loose, watching the road ahead. When they reached the yard, Elias helped the girls down. Lily ran to the porch and spun in a circle, arms wide. Clara stood looking at the house, the smoke from the chimney, the patched roof, the fence Elias had mended a dozen times. It's still ours, she said. Elias looked at her then, at Lily, laughing in the yard, then at the land, stretching out under the wide sky. It is, he said. That evening they ate supper at the table, ham from the smokehouse, potatoes roasted in the ashes, bread Clara had baked that morning. After Elias opened the whiskey bottle, he poured 3 small measures into tin cups. Lily got apple cider instead. They drank standing in the kitchen, the lamp burning low. Clara raised her cup. To staying. Elias touched his cup to hers. To staying. Lily clinked hers against both. To home. They drank. The whiskey burned clean down Elias's throat. Outside, the last light left the mountains. Stars came out one by one, bright against the dark. The land waited quiet and patient under a sky that held no hurry. Spring came slow that year, reluctant, as an old man rising from a long sleep. The snow retreated in patches, leaving the ground sodden and dark. Creeks swelled, carrying meltwater cold enough to ache the teeth. Elias watched the change from the porch each morning, coffee in hand, while Clara fed the chickens and Lily hunted for the first green shoots pushing through the mud. The calves dropped early. Elias spent nights in the barn lantern, hung high sleeves rolled to the elbow. He pulled 2 backward, saved a heifer from bleeding out after a difficult birth. Clara stayed with him the 3rd night, holding towels and hot water, learning the quiet rhythm of it, how to speak low to calm the cow, how to wrap the wet newborn in burlap till it steadied. When the calf stood at last on trembling legs, Clara let out a breath she had been holding for hours. Her eyes shone in the lamplight. You did good, Elias said. She wiped her hands on her apron. We both did. Lily woke at dawn to see the new calves. She knelt in the straw, small fingers outstretched. One nosed her palm curious. She laughed a sound clear and unguarded. Elias watched from the doorway, arms folded, feeling something settle deep in his bones. The house changed with the season. Clara whitewashed the kitchen walls, the lime smell sharp and clean. She hung curtains she had sewn from flour sacks, pale blue printed with tiny flowers. Lily planted seeds in tin cans on the windowsill, radish lettuce beans. Every day she checked for sprouts, whispering to them, as if they might answer. Elias repaired the porch steps, planned new boards, smooth-nailed them down with steady blows. When he finished, he sat on the top step and watched the girls chase each other through the yard. Lily's hair had grown long enough to braid. Clara did it each morning with careful fingers. They moved with the ease of children who had forgotten to be afraid. One afternoon, a letter arrived from Denver. Clara's mother's sister, whom they had never met, had heard of their mother's passing. The woman wrote in neat script offering to send train fare if the girls wished to come east. She had a small house, a husband who worked the railroad room for two more. Clara read the letter aloud at supper. Her voice stayed even. When she finished, she folded the paper once and set it beside her plate. Elias waited. "I don't want to go," Lily said first, small but certain. Clara looked at her sister, then at Elias. "Neither do I." He nodded once. "Then you stay." No more was said. Claire burned the letter in the stove the next morning. The paper curled black, then ash. Summer followed, hot and dry. They cut hay in July, the air thick with dust and the sweet smell of curing grass. Elias drove the mower. Clara raked. Lily rode the wagon, tossing water to the horses from a bucket. Sweat soaked their shirts by noon. At dusk, they sat under the cottonwoods by the creek feet in the shallows, eating cold cornbread and buttermilk. The water ran clear over smooth stones. Lily caught minnows in a jar, watched them flash silver, then let them go. Elias began to speak more of the past, not all at once, but in pieces. One evening he told them about the war, how he had walked home after Appomattox with nothing but the clothes on his back and a promise to his father to keep the land whole. Another night he spoke of Sarah, his sister, how she had loved to read by candlelight till the wick burned low. Clara listened close. Lily fell asleep against his arm. In August, the county fair came to town. Elias hitched the wagon, loaded the girls, and a crate of eggs. A wheel of cheese. Clara had made a jar of wild plum jelly. They drove the 12 miles under a sky so blue it hurt the eyes. At the fairgrounds, the air smelled of fried dough and livestock. Lily rode the carousel 3 times, clinging to a painted horse with chipped gold reins. Clara entered her jelly in the women's preserve contest and won second place, a blue ribbon, and 50 cents. She pinned the ribbon to her dress and wore it home. That night, back at the ranch, Elias built a small fire in the yard. They sat around it on blankets while the stars came out. Clara held the ribbon in her lap like something precious. "I never won anything before," she said. Elias poked the fire with a stick. Sparks rose and died. "You've won plenty. Just not the kind they pin on cloth." She looked at him across the flames. "Like what?" "Like keeping this place breathing. Like teaching Lily to read the trail signs in the snow. Like making a home out of a house that was empty too long." Clara's eyes filled, but she did not cry. She reached over and took his hand. Lily crawled into his lap, already half asleep. They sat that way till the fire burned to coals. The night air cooled. Somewhere an owl called low and lonely, then fell silent. Elias looked out across the dark fields. The land stretched away under moonlight, familiar in every rise and hollow. It had carried him through grief, through war, through years of silence. Now it carried 3. He felt Clara's fingers tighten once in his. No one spoke. They did not need to. Autumn turned the cottonwoods along the creek to flame. Leaves drifted down in slow spirals, catching light like scattered coins. Elias rode the fence line one crisp morning, checking for breaks before the first hard freeze. The air smelled of cured grass and distant wood smoke. When he returned to the yard, Clara stood on the porch, arms folded against the chill, watching him approach. She had grown taller over the summer, or perhaps it was only the way she carried herself now, shoulders back, chin level, no longer shrinking from the wind. Lily ran out to meet him, bare feet, silent on the cooling earth, and tugged his sleeve. "Claire's got something," she said, eyes wide with importance. Elias dismounted, loosened the cinch, and followed them inside. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and apples. On the table sat a pie-crust, golden steam still rising from the slits cut in the top. Beside it lay a small bundle wrapped in clean muslin. Clara's hands moved quick and sure as she unwrapped it. Inside rested a simple wooden box, no bigger than a man's palm. She lifted the lid. A ring lay on faded velvet, plain gold, thin, from years of wear, the same one Elias had kept in the strong box since the day his mother died. "I found it when I was sweeping under your cot," Clara said. "It fell out of the box when I moved it to clean." Elias looked at the ring, then at her. "You kept it safe." "I thought," she swallowed, "I thought maybe you'd want to give it again. Someday. To someone." The words hung between them, quiet and heavy. Lily watched from the doorway, doll forgotten in her hand. Elias reached out and closed the box with gentle fingers. He set it on the windowsill where the afternoon light caught the wood. "Not someday," he said. Clara's breath caught. He turned to her. "If you'll have it. If you'll have me." She stared at him a long moment, eyes searching his face the way she had that first night in the stable. Then she stepped forward and placed her hand in his. Her fingers were cool, steady. "I already do," she said. Lily let out a small, delighted sound and ran to them, wrapping her arms around both their waists. Elias felt the warmth of them against him, small and fierce, and something in his chest gave way completely, like ice breaking on the creek in spring, loud and final. They spoke no more of it that day. Supper was simple roast chicken potatoes, mashed with butter, the apple pie sliced warm. Afterward, Elias carried the ring to the barn where the light was better. He polished it with a soft cloth till the gold shone soft and true. When he returned to the house, the girls waited by the stove. He took Clara's left hand. She did not tremble. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit as though it had always belonged there. She looked down at it, then up at him, eyes bright. Lily clapped once, soft and solemn. That night they sat on the porch after dark. The sky spread wide in clear stars, thick as frost on grass. Elias held Clara's hand, thumb tracing the ring. Lily leaned against his side, already drowsy. "Will we stay forever?" she asked, voice small. Elias looked out across the dark fields, the shadowed shapes of cattle, grazing quiet, the creek murmuring low in the distance. "As long as the land lets us," he said. Clara rested her head on his shoulder. "Then, forever's a good word." They sat in silence while the night deepened. No wind stirred. The house behind them breathed warm light through the windows, steady as a heartbeat. In the months that followed, the valley noticed. Neighbors came with gifts, jars of honey, a quilt piece from scraps, a calf from McAllister's best bull as a wedding present. Whitaker performed the ceremony on the porch one Sunday in late October. No preacher needed, just a few words spoken under open sky. Clara wore her mother's dress, let out and mended. Lily carried wild asters in her arms. Elias stood in his black coat boots, polished hand steady when he took Clara's. Afterward, they ate under the cottonwood's long tables, borrowed food, shared laughter, rising easy and warm. Children ran through the fallen leaves. Men raised tin cups of cider. Women hugged Clara and told her she had done well. When the last wagon rolled away, Elias walked Clara and Lily back to the house. The moon had risen silver over the fields. Inside, the fire burned low. Lily climbed the ladder to the small loft room Elias had finished that summer, her own space now, with a window that looked toward the mountains. Clara stood at the table, fingers tracing the ring. Elias came up behind her, rested his hands on her shoulders. "You all right?" he asked. She turned, looked up at him. Better than all right. He bent and kissed her, then slow, careful, the way a man kisses something he has waited years to claim. She rose on her toes to meet him, arms coming around his neck. When they parted, her cheeks were flushed, eyes soft. They blew out the lamps together. In the dark, the house settled around them, familiar timbers creaking, the stove ticking as it cooled. Outside, the land lay quiet under moonlight stretching away to the horizon. It had seen drought and blizzard, grief and war. Now it saw three people who had chosen each other against all the odds of a hard country. They slept in the same bed that night, Elias's arm around Clara, her head on his chest. Lily's soft breathing drifted down from the loft. No one spoke. No one needed to. Morning would come with chores, with weather that might turn sharp, with years still to walk together. But the walking would be side by side. The land waited patient, as always. And for the first time in decades, Elias Crowe woke to the sound of breathing that was not his own, and felt no emptiness at all. Join the frontier and subscribe for more cowboy tales.